Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, one of the latest Tyreek Hill trade rumors. He has been active on social media. Then, because of the activity on social media, there was somebody that connected Tyreek to the Las Vegas Raiders. I'll tell you who that is. And then, because we're talking about Tyreek, will the Raiders ultimately try to make a deal for the Miami wide receiver? That's all coming up right now here on the Raiders Report. The Tyreek Hill trade speculation has been around this entire offseason. There's really only one person to blame, and that's himself, Tyreek Hill. Now, I am making this video on Monday, and literally the day that I'm making this video, Tyreek's on social media being like, why does everybody think that I'm going to end up getting traded? The reason is, Tyreek, because you're putting stuff out on social media, and a lot of these cryptic tweets are rolling in through over the weekend. Like, I know Tyreek's big thing that he does is the whole peace sign, but when you're throwing up peace signs and you're throwing out tweets time and time again about the possibility of you being traded away, when you're a player that is just that big of a team name, it's going to be looked at as all 31 NFL teams are going to have some interest in Hill. And for the Las Vegas Raiders and where we currently stand, we know that we're looking for wide receivers. We know that this has been a team that has been interested in a Hunter Renfrow, bringing him in for a visit. So I think like when people see the name Hunter Renfrow comes in for a visit, Tyreek Hill's posting cryptic stuff, everybody sits up here and goes, well, are the Raiders going to be a team that's potentially interested in Tyreek Hill? And this is something that I wanted to be able to do on the show because anytime I get a DM and anytime I get a question over and over and over again, my job here as a Raiders Report host is to sit up here and go, whether or not it's actually going to happen for the Silver and Black. So in terms of Tyreek, if he ends up getting traded pre-June 1st, which let's be honest, I think if a trade ends up happening around Tyreek Hill, it does end up happening sooner rather than later. Dolphins eat $28.3 million in 2025. If it's a post-June 1st trade, which I don't know, maybe it ends up happening, maybe it doesn't, because there is no real timetable on this trade, then it does end up saving Miami a little bit of extra money. But because when Tyreek originally did that trade coming over from Kansas City down to Miami this past offseason, they also restructured the contract, so he's got 3 void years on the back end of it. However, though, here's what Over the Cap has to say on the Tyreek Hill contract, because there is some interesting little nuances in the deal. The structure of the contract was unusual for a star player extension and indicated that Miami's front office understood that this could be more of a one-and-done scenario. While the guarantee is large for 2025, the salary itself is somewhat reasonable, ranking 5th among receivers in the NFL, which makes it tradable. Miami did not include a large roster bonus in 2025 as part of the deal, and they lowered his salary cap charge through the use of the option bonus worth $15.85 million. But with a date that is basically tied to the start of the regular season, normally such bonuses would be paid in March when used early in a contract. That option date gives Miami a long time to work out a trade for Hill while keeping him at a cap number under $28 million and forcing all of the guarantee onto a trade partner. Hill has no injury protection in 2026. I have seen a lot of people talk about the idea of the Raiders bringing in Tyreek Hill this offseason. It was actually a topic that I discussed in a mailbag, I want to say almost over a month ago, but because of all the new Tyreek Hill questions and speculation, I knew I had to break down a whole new video of should the Raiders do it and whether or not I think the Raiders end up ultimately doing or not. If the Raiders do end up trading for Tyreek, you already know I'm going to be going live, and it's going to be a very, very long live show. But one of the reasons why I want people to subscribe to the Raiders Report is because I like rumors. I like when people talk about sports. I like when people talk about players on other teams, and then if they wonder, should the Raiders go out and get them? My job is going to be seeing those rumors and then painting an entire picture, because I think there's a lot of people that wonder, could the Raiders trade Tyreek Hill? And after you get done watching this video, you're all going to go, yeah, either A, I think it's going to happen, or B, I don't think it's going to happen. Because at the very end of today's show, I'm going to give a really strong take for a lot of the OGs that don't watch this show all the time. So now the question is, could the Raiders potentially be interested in going out and getting him? So Adam Rank, who is a pretty well NFL analyst, recently linked Hill to the Raiders after all the cryptic tweets that he put out there on social media. But it's not only that. It's also what the Raiders have done this entire offseason. The Raiders have been linked to DK Metcalf. The Raiders tried to make a deal for DK. It's just Pittsburgh was a little bit more, on the higher end of that. The Raiders have tried to be aggressive this offseason when they have wanted something. Matthew Stafford, DK Metcalf is another good example of that. Geno Smith is a good example of that. But it's been reported that the Las Vegas Raiders are looking for a true number one. And I know Hunter Renfrow is not a true number one, but if you bring in a wide receiver in on a visit, that tells me and the entire world we are looking to add to this wide receiver room, which is not a secret. And I do anticipate that the Raiders add a receiver in the draft. And hell, I still think that there's a chance that they're going to try to add another receiver before the NFL draft ends up going down. A lot of the moves that the Raiders made, though, with Pete Carroll and John Spytek this regime has been adding some veterans, adding some players that they have, confidence in for the long haul. And I know that Tyreek's coming off a down year, and even for him, down year, 81 catches, 959 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Like, that's not a receiver that you're going to pay $30 million plus for. But the reason why he's making the amount of money that he's making is because of what he was able to do the first 3 years. I guess I should say the first few years in Miami, and then that final year there with Kansas City. He's got speed. He's got talent. There's no doubt that he is an unbelievable alien of an athlete. It's why they call him the Cheetah. But I want you to go down in the comments section, because I think we as Raider fans and us as NFL fans got to do a better job of just being like, just because some big-name player is getting dealt doesn't always mean that it makes sense for the Raiders. So my question to you is this: trade or pass? Will the Raiders trade for Tyreek Hill? My answer is coming up right here after this YouTube ad break. I am a firm believer that the Raiders will never trade for Tyreek Hill, and there is a huge reason of why it's never going to happen. And anytime I get a question that in the back of my mind, I'm going, man, I don't see why there's just a 0% chance or a 0.1% chance that a trade ever happens. And I would say people that don't follow the Raiders all that closely, it's fine, and that's why I want you to hit that subscribe button. But people that don't follow the Raiders all that closely are probably sitting here going, well, why wouldn't we try to go out and trade for one of the best players in the NFL? It's because of something that happened many, many years ago that, again, not all Raider fans know about. I'm going to tell you what that is, and I'm going to break down all of the reasons, because I think there's multiple reasons of why the Las Vegas Raiders will not trade for Tyreek Hill. Before I get into that, though, if you're looking for the Raiders' new draft hats, if you go to chatsports.com/Raiders hats, you're going to be able to see a bunch of different hats, even like the one I got on right now. But if you go to that link down there below, the first 6 pictures that are featured are all the different Raiders draft hats. They come in black, they come in cream. There is a trucker hat, there is a snapback, there is fitted caps on there. There's hats, I believe, even for children as well, since they have, I would imagine, smaller heads. But there's even ones that have some on here with pins on top of that. So if you want a hat that doesn't have a pin on it, like I said, there's 6 different versions of the Raiders draft hats, and I know as soon as I start talking about them, they start flying off the shelves. They are not going to be available, I would imagine, come draft time. So if you want them, get it started right now. Chatsports.com/Raiders draft hats. All right, so the back end of today's show, and I was thinking about how I wanted to do this show. I was like, do I do it? There's no way the Raiders are ever going to trade for Tyreek Hill, or do I paint the picture of here's why the rumors are there, and then the back half is me going to say the Raiders aren't going to trade for Tyreek Hill. The first reason in this is he is too expensive. And when you listen to what Over the Cap had to say about Tyreek's deal, there's a lot of interesting notes in that, because I was showing Chugs, when you look at the base value of Tyreek's contract, it almost looks like you're just going to take on a $10 million base, which, I'd sit up here and be like, dude, $10 base for Tyreek Hill, that's a hell of a deal. What's interesting, and again, go back to that Over the Cap quote, is the per-game roster bonus. This season, Tyreek Hill will make $1.8 million per game. So if you're a team that's trading for him, sure, you're right now you have him at a low cap hit. Like $10 million, I believe, is what his cap hit would be. However, though, you also have to have that ability to give him $1.8 million. So when you see the 40.6 there in parentheses, it's the overall total cost of what Mark Davis, the Raiders, would have to give Tyreek Hill. Sure, he's got no money guaranteed, no injury prediction or protection in 2026. So this could end up being a one-year prove-it deal. But one-year prove-it deal for Tyreek Hill and that much money does not align with what the Raiders have done, which brings me to my next point. When you look at what the Raiders have done in free agency and what the Raiders are planning and what Spytek and Pete Carroll have said that they're going to do in the draft, That doesn't align with going out and making a huge trade for Tyreek Hill. If they were going to go out and make a splash trade at the receiver position, it would have been for DK Metcalf, somebody that worked with Pete Carroll, somebody that has that relationship. And I can't remember the exact terminology that Spytek used today for the whole, talking about free agency. He said it was like intelligently spending money because he was talking about people going out there and overspending. Robust, that's the word. Intelligently, another word was robust, was being thrown out there. But trading for Hill, I think, is the exact opposite of spending money in the smart way, or bringing in solid locker room guys that are going to be here for the long haul, because that's not how the Tyreek Hill contract looks. And if you do decide to keep Tyreek in the year 2026, bro, that's a cap hit of $53 million. For the Raiders and for most NFL teams, that's going to be way too much money. Let's go to the final reason here, and this is why I really wanted to make this show, because I feel like I have made this point over and over and over again when we are live, because I get asked this question very frequently, and because I'm just continuously getting asked it, I'm like, I just got to make an entire show around the idea that the Raiders are not going to be a team that trades for Tyreek Hill. So if you don't know who Fred Biletnikoff is, he's one of the greatest Raiders and one of the greatest, college football receivers of all time. But the Raiders made a rule, and it is called, in Raiders terms, the Fred Biletnikoff rule. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because Tyreek Hill does have a domestic violence assault back in college in 2014. It was one of the reasons why he didn't participate in the NFL Combine. You guys can go in and read all that you need to around that. But the Raiders, they partnered with the Biletnikoff Foundation and Tracey's Place of Hope in 2015, which is, literally a year after the whole Tyreek thing happened. But because the Raiders made a pledge, and you can say what you want about the silver and black, you can say what you want about Mark Davis, but if there has been one organization that has always stood up to domestic assault, domestic violence, has also stood up to, getting coaches of different color included in this organization, the Raiders have always done that. So I would be shocked, okay, and I mean it, shocked, if you're telling me the Raiders go out and they trade for somebody who's got a domestic violence background, who plays the same position as Fred Biletnikoff, and then even on top of that, it goes against everything that they've done in free agency and the draft. This regime is doing calculated moves, and they are thinking about all the little details before they make the move. I find it very, very shocking that this whole Fred Biletnikoff conversation would not come up in regards to Tyreek Hill. That's just the reason why I don't think a Tyreek Hill trade is ever going to happen. So in conclusion of this video, before I say it's impossible, I always got to remember that it's the NFL, but I'm going to put it at 0.1% chance that Tyreek ends up getting traded to the Raiders. That 0.1, and I'm not kidding when I say this, it would have to be something insane to do with Tom Brady and Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, because their relationship is very, very close from their Michigan ties. But Mark Davis has made it clear where he stands on domestic violence, and Pete Carroll and John Spytek, I don't think are going to go out and they're going to spend all that money. For all of those reasons, please stop asking me. Tyreek Hill, he's not going to be a Raider.